ICQ Podcast episode 340. Get on the air to care of Christmas. Well, hello, Merry Christmas, season greetings and Happy New Year to all our amateur ham radio enthusiast friends out there, and welcome to the 340th episode of the ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast. Supported this episode by Bill Seward, Whiskey 4, Echo X-Ray Tango, Stephen Wardley, Golf 6, Juliet Echo Foxtrot, and of course along with our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, Martin, M1MRB, is joined by Chris, Mike 0, Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike 0, Sierra Golf Lima, Ed, DD5, Lima Papa, Frank, Kilo 4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, to discuss the latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is a discussion with the RSGB and the NHS in relation to their Christmas update of their Get on the Air campaign. Well, as always, we can't thank our donors enough for paying our way to keep the show advert free and, as they showing their support and value in the show. So along with our subscription donors, we've got Bill Seward, Whiskey 4, Echo X-Ray Tango. And he said just dropped a renewal of the annual subscription in the bucket. Looks like it's a subscription now, so there's no more forgetting or procrastinating from me. Merry Christmas 73s to all. So Bill used to drop us a donation every year, very kindly so. And as I say, he's now taking the option now of setting up one of the annual subscriptions. So we really appreciate it, Bill. And as I say, I mean, those payments are really important to keeping us, to say, advert free. Stephen Wardley, Golf 6, Juliet Echo Victor is the next guy. He says, hi guys, just made a donation to the podcast and want to say how much I enjoy the content. I look forward to each episode and listen while at work on Bluetooth earbuds. So it's time I listen to my podcast too on Bluetooth earbuds as I'm doing other things. He says he works at a small family-run microbrewery and has its own bottling plant, etc. And one aspect of the job, which they all take turns on, but it can be a little repetitive. So it's great having the entertainment of the podcast to listen to. Pass on my many thanks to all your regular contributors on the round table. It's great to hear from you all. So that's from Stephen, Golf 6, Juliet Echo Foxtrot. Well, as I mentioned, you can show your value for the show just by doing something very simple. You go to icqpodcast.com, click on the donate section, and say, think of the value the show brings you. Come up with that as a monetary value, and either select one of the options that we have there, or to choose one of your own and pop it our way and say everything is greatly received. Right now we join Martin, Chris, Martin, Ed, Frank and Bill to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur radio news, including licensed study groups and the anniversary of Transatlantic Tests. As always, guys, hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to this evening's News Roundtable for episode 340 of the ICQ podcast. Episode 340, boys. We're getting there. Tonight I'm joined by Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Martin. Hi, guys. Nice to be here again.
Yeah, great to have you. Also, my partner in crime, Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL. How you doing, Martin?
It's a nice round number, 340, isn't it? I like it. Good evening. Hello.
It's good to have you. Let's move over to Germany. I've got Mr. Ed Durant, DD5LP. Hi, Ed.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I feel like I'm 340 years old today. It's been a hard day.
Yeah, I concur on that one. I've had a bad couple of days, but we're getting there. You know, let's be positive about it and keep up the smiles. Moving over to the other side of the pond, we have Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH. Hi, Frank.
Hey, Martin, everybody on the group here, as well as our listeners. It's great to be back this time.
Yeah, it's good to have you, Frank. And we're hoping that Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B, will try and join us as the time goes on. Bill's been called away yet again to another meeting at work. I would say damned inconvenient, but I'm pretty sure it's the time that I choose to record, which is probably more inconvenient to him. But Bill will join us fairly soon. Right, let's get started. I liked this one. A UK amateur radio full licence study group has been set up in the UK. Now, study groups are interesting things, but it's something different. So I'm going to say, Chris, what do you think about this one?
Well, I think it's really good. This is part of the online amateur radio community. It's like a virtual club. I think there's a few now that have sprung up for the last few years, and this one's looks really good. They're doing lots of things. They're doing lots of training, and in fact, looking at the website, it looks like one of our previous members of our club who moved away. Paul is actually part of this group, so he mentions actually the other day on one of our club meetings, he joined our Zoom call and mentioned about they were doing some training courses. So this is actually part of that. So yeah, really good. It means that people can still be part of something during lockdown, and in fact, this seems to be the way things are going. The use of virtual, Zoom and these things. I mean, I think perhaps lockdown has accelerated this, but I think this is the way things are going to be in the future. And I think this kind of supports a little bit around those discussions we had a couple of years ago at the convention around, hubs and clubs and that sort of thing. I think it's all sort of starting to take shape, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris, on that. And let's say, I don't think we're going back to what it was 18 months ago with club situation. I think things will move on and change slightly. I just hope, and getting together and doing things is probably the one thing that a lot of people are missing out on. So this sort of thing, to me, sounds quite good. Mine, what's your thoughts?
Well, I was just thinking virtual club. Where did I hear of that idea before? But Chris just mentioned it then, didn't he, on the head of the back at the convention. UK based, I like it. Any way to get your license or help you study for your license, I think is a great idea. We all know, I'm not going to go on about it, but the current situation in the world at the moment is terrible to say the least. But if you've got more time on your hands for whatever reason, go for it to get involved with this. And it's a full license study group. So if you want to study to get your full license, here's an ideal opportunity. Make some good out of what has been a pretty rubbish year.
Well, it's not been that bad, Martin. We've produced a few podcasts.
Well, we've produced a few podcasts, but I'm saying in general, outside of the amateur radio world, we know we're not in a good situation in the world at the moment. But outside of the amateur radio world, it's not good. But in our world, go for it. Use this time to get your license, to upgrade your station, to do those things that you wouldn't normally be doing. I'm still working, but I'm working at home, so I'm now saving the equivalent of 3 hours every day in my commute and that sort of stuff. I'm playing with my toys. It's an ideal opportunity to do this sort of stuff.
Certainly is. Ed, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, just to point out to the listeners, this actually isn't a course. It's in addition to any training you're doing. They draw a comparison to a book club where you join up and read the same books together and help each other. And I think that's it. It's as a study group, it's one of these things that you also have in colleges and schools to help each other. But it's in addition to the training. So you're doing the training for the full license. But maybe there's some points in the training that you're not really clear on. And in a study group with, half a dozen of you, one might be able to explain it in a way that the others understand. So, yeah, very practical, very good idea.
Yeah, and you do touch on a good point there, Ed, because often when you discuss things with people and you're trying to explain something to somebody else, it taxes your brains, but it's interesting. I've learnt far more by having to explain things to somebody who didn't really understand it, and then realise that my understanding of the subject has gone up significantly because although I might have described it simply to them, I've suddenly realised, yeah, that's what it's actually about. Yeah, that makes more sense to me now. So, yeah. What's your thoughts, Frank?
I agree with what's been said. I want to take off a little bit on what Ed contributed here, quoting from their website at the oarc.uk. This is not a training course, but a study opportunity with like-minded individuals with a common goal. And I want to emphasize that. I think to some degree, like the RSGB panel that you and Chris chaired here a couple of years ago now, with the idea of hubs versus clubs, a regionalization of resources and sharing, coupling that with, the pandemic that we have now and the disruption of our normal, usual and customary club organization. We've had things like this come out of it using tools like Zoom, Skype, and others. to bring folks together who would not have physically come together for many different reasons. So I look at it as another one of these organic grassroots origin, if you will, forms of organized discussions about amateur radio. And I think, Martin, you hit on an important thing. One thing we know from studying social change is when we have these disruptions, whether it is a natural catastrophe, whether it is a depression like the so-called Great Depression in the U.S., the potato famine in Ireland, etc., it generates change of one type or another that sometimes can be difficult to predict. But I think, as you say, we will change how we do some notion of club. And this is just a great example of one of these coming up organically. So I'm very impressed with what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it'd be very interesting, Frank, in about 10 years' time to look back and see how things have changed and by how much. I mean, the last 20 years in amateur radio has changed a lot technically, but some of the things that are happening now, I think, will change how we do things going forward, which is only a good thing because it is nice to keep things fresh and do what people need. So that's my feeling anyway. Right, moving on to our next news story. The Belgians are being given a credit card or bank card format license certificate. Bit different. I mean, Chris, Frank and I had the print your own license in the States where you've got a little bit of paper you cut out and put in your license. But this looks a bit more than that, Frank, doesn't it?
It is. I kind of like it. It's a commodity-oriented thing. Many of us here in the States and those outside the States who hold U.S. licenses have often printed these little credit card size paper things and then laminated them. I know I have several. I keep some in my portable rigs just to ensure that I do have my license with me at all times. I keep one in my wallet. And it's interesting, jokingly, I made the comment that I just can't wait to get that magnetic strip so they can charge us for stuff. But that's probably not part of this. But in the future, with digital communications and other things, you can imagine the need to authenticate. Might be interesting, the notion of having a magnetic strip there for other information. Who knows? That's just me speculating. But kind of a neat idea. I think the Belgians have started something that might appear elsewhere.
Yeah, it'd be a neat idea, Frank. And I'm going off at a tangent here, but it'd be a neat idea if you had the magnetic strip and you had to put the card into the radio to be able to operate it, which would kill off the pirates pretty quick, I'd suggest.
Could be a future mode, couldn't it? A future digital mode could have some kind of smart card, plug it into your radio, and that proves that that's your call sign. And yeah, who knows? In 100 years' time, that could be, or maybe even sooner, that might be the way it works.
You know, Chris, that's a little bit like the logbook of the world having that little certificate to authenticate who you are with those records. So even though I said it in jest, I think you guys have come up with something that gives it some meat here and legitimacy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, from my point of view, if you're going to have like this bank card type license, then it really ought to be, let's actually take it a next step forward and try and do something with it. But it needs national to do it.
Yeah, I mean, going off on a big tangent, so way off topic. So things like DMR, D-Star, System Fusion, there's no password involved in that. You put in your call sign, or in the case of DMR, you put in your ID number, which is assigned to you. But there's nothing stopping anybody else putting that number in and pretending to be you. There's no password required on my radio to, someone could pretend to be me on D-Star or DMR or Fusion. So, hey, this could be a future. We're stopping that, but if that's what we want to do, yeah.
Yeah, it might be too much security, Chris, but who knows? Ed, what's your thoughts?
You'd be able to see who's been blipping up the repeater all the time. Yeah, and on HF, you could if you're running FreeDV codec 2, that can certainly have an interface to a computer device, be it a card reader or a fingerprint reader. If you want to go that way.
Exactly.
It's all,
I'm not-
technically possible.
I think it's that if you want to go that way, Mr. Rothwell, I think you might want to, because you're a repeater keeper for a fusion repeater, and I think Frank might be as well, actually. Is there some sort of concept of some sort of digital ID in a fusion radio that identifies that particular radio?
Yes,
Yeah.
there is.
If you're operating digitally.
Yeah.
So with analog, it just works like any other analog radio. When it's digital, there is like, I guess like in the IT world, you have a MAC address of a particular device. It's a very short code. It's like 6 or 7 characters. And you can see, so if someone has something programmed in, we ask people to put their call signs in for obvious reasons, and then we can see that they are licensed. If they program something else in, you can go in there and you can block it and say that you need to put your call sign in and program it correctly. If you have someone that is just being a pain on the connection and is obviously using your gateway to connect to someone else, you can block them, so they obviously won't be able to go out and connect to anything else. And I think the good thing here is Yaesu have twigged onto this, and they've actually, because of the radio ID, you can put whatever you like into the call sign field. You can change it to your M6 call sign or your 2E0 call sign, whatever. It will still, it's the block on the radio, not what you type into it. So the incentive there is to behave. Otherwise, the repeater keepers can block you. I've never blocked anybody for misbehaving. Fortunately, we haven't had to. I've only blocked one person because I've blocked a few people with like CB type call signs, and I've blocked one person who's just had his name typed in, and I've reached out to him and said, can you put your call sign in? Because some of the other people on the gateway don't like it when we send traffic through with just a name on it. It's like it has to have a call sign, which it tells you to when you switch your radio on, to be fair. And generally people just come back, oh yeah, sorry, they change it straight away and then just lift the block straight away.
And the cool thing about what Martin is saying is that it has GPS in most of the rigs, not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But you can kind of sort of see where people are. Now, you may be able to turn that off, but the point is you can also see how far away they are. And so that's also another element of that. I had a little bit of that. Martin, we had somebody who just declared they were going to do NBIMS digital over one of my repeaters from the trustee. And at the time, the duty cycle, we just didn't think it would handle it. And so we had to have a chat with that person who started out saying, well, you don't own the frequency, I said, yeah, but on the repeater. And it's with permission. You don't have a right to use that repeater, even though you have a right to use the frequency. If it's coordinated, then Bob's your uncle, and that's kind of the frequency in a given area. So he sort of had a little bit of an attitude adjustment and went somewhere else with the NBIMS. But that's the closest I had to block anybody to this point. And as Martin suggested, most hams, they want to, it's usually out of ignorance rather than malice.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's a good element of that.
Guy, I think, he was connecting and just leaving it connected like 24 hours a day. He was connecting to listen to a particular gateway. And we tried like, hey, can you stop doing this? And, you're welcome to use it. You're welcome to listen. You're welcome to connect to gateways. But perhaps the second it disconnects, don't reconnect straight away to the American link, because you're stopping analog users using it. And I kept calling him. I emailed him on QRZ. He didn't respond. In the end, we blocked him. And he reached out to me. And I said, here's the deal. He went, oh, I'm really sorry. I had no idea it was an analog box too. I thought the digital users could just disconnect. Like, no. Oh, really sorry. And I made it clear to him, you're very welcome to use the thing, but it did provoke the contact from one to the other. So it's a useful thing to have. Although I'm sure that there's a few analog repeater keepers out there that would like to be able to block a couple of users just that.
Well, and it's always good to encourage them to get their own personal hotspot, because if they want to do that, then they can connect. But Chris, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think that we've covered quite a bit here.
Well, for quite a small subject, something completely different. But there you go. It was a discussion, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's quite often. We've gone a little bit off topic in as fairness, but I think it's been good ideas come out of this.
Well, Martin, I'll quote our philosopher in the U.S., Forrest Gump. With the Belgians, it's like a box of chocolates. You don't know what we're going to talk about.
That's probably very true, Frank. And yeah, it's an interesting one. I was going to be a bit flippant and say, with GPS and the call sign or the name coming up and the radio ID being broadcast, if they misbehaved, I'm sure with the GPS you could drop an exocet on them and that would be the end of them.
I think you can turn off the GPS. I'll be honest with you. I've
Yeah.
tried.
Yeah, you can, but
You can.
and it's surprising how many people that have got digital radios don't realise that every time they blip the repeater, their call sign comes up. But there you go. You see it, Martin. I know you do. And
It comes up on the logs because the server's here, so I can see every digital call sign that's gone through the repeater. It's incredible. I'm surprised how many users actually there are. There's about 100 unique call signs that I see on the list in the last few months. It's quite impressive.
yeah. All right. Well, that was quite a nice one to cover off. Next news story. Just checking if Bill has joined us. Still not with us, so hopefully he'll join us before the end. Our next news story is the Transatlantic Tests that were started 99 years ago, so it's the 99th anniversary, on December the 11th, 1921. Ed, do you want to go first on this one?
Oh, funny you passed it to me. I thought it was going to go to Frank, because this is mainly a US or US-UK celebration. And it's actually a lot of different history in here. Frank was saying before we started the recording, there's quite a bit of history around this first communication across the Atlantic. From my understanding of what went on, the first attempts were not getting anywhere, and the RCA, the Radio Club of America, actually sent one of their people over to the UK, to Scotland, with the very latest and greatest radio equipment, which was actually a superhet receiver, I believe, and they were able to make the contact, and that was 99 years ago. And I'm sure there'll be a big celebration next year when it's the 100, but even 99 years is a good time to celebrate the fact that amateur radio managed to make it across the pond, as we say. With that, I'll leave it for perhaps for Frank to expand on it, because I think he knows the history of it a bit more than I do.
Yeah, go for it, Frank.
Well, thanks, Ed. I'm not sure that I live up to your expectations, but here's some things that I think are important. It's important for us to acknowledge milestones. You know, you've heard me kind of quip, I'm looking for the first intergalactic QSO, particularly Earth, Mars. And that will be also an important thing. But this one set the stage for the common person to understand, wow, this stuff isn't just nerd type, stuff in the backyard. We can talk from the U.S. over to United Kingdom, which at that time was traversed largely by ship. So when you think of it in that context, there's a couple of things I think that are historically important. One of the things that made it work, and we say this to our students and each other today, yeah, you got the great rig, this 9-tube superhet, but what's more important was the antenna. And so Harold Beveridge, whose namesake is the Beveridge antenna, 1,300 foot long antenna, helped set the stage for that contact. And that's one little bit. The second bit was, I'll dig at my compatriots in Newington, Connecticut at ARRL, being that I'm a flunky for them out in the Delta Division. The ARL may have organized it, but it was the team from the Radio Club of America, which is still in operation today, that was the most consistently received. And one name should stand out to most listeners, Edwin Armstrong, a very critical person in the history of radio. So it's 99, as Chris said. Hey, it'll be great when we look at 100 on it. But this was a milestone, and I'm not big on celebrating every darn thing that ever happened in the past, but I think this is one we ought to take notice of.
Yeah, and it's a feel good, and it's something that we take for granted a little bit now. But as you say, it would have been 5 days if you wanted to get a message from me from the States across the pond by ship. It would have been about 5 days.
Well, Martin, I was looking at this actually. So there were undersea cables at the time. So just looking at Google and Wikipedia, the first undersea cable was actually 1858 on the Atlantic. So we had a way of communicating, but this is a stepping stone, I think, in making the world smaller. If you think today, in 2020, I can email Frank in Mississippi and arrive within 10 seconds, and that's just a given. That's just a taken for granted. But doing that 100 years ago was very much not taken for granted, and I think we would have been able to have this conversation via the internet and record it and put it out on a podcast, and people around the world listen to it within minutes of it, or within a few days of us doing it. The world has definitely got smaller, and this is definitely one of those stepping stones that help to do that.
You're right. It's the technology's got quicker. It's the manual intervention that's still the slowest point now of producing anything, I'd suggest. Martin, what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the initial thoughts are why are we celebrating this at 99 and not 100? But Frank mentioned the thing there that he doesn't want to celebrate every milestone. But come on, Frank, any excuse for a drink? That's all I'm going to say. Any excuse for a fizzy drink with a bit of a kick, if you know what I'm saying. One of the comments I really, really like about this guy, during a pre-event dinner arranged for him by his British hosts, Godley met Guglielmo Marconi, founder of radio, who asked him to remind the US amateurs that I too am but an amateur. And I thought that really says a lot. It's an amateur guy developing stuff, in this case, radio. And so, that's a great sort of inspirational quote, I think.
It is. I will say you're talking to a guy over in in Yankee Land that has a set of official British pint glasses, sir. So I just want you to know I hold my own on that drinking thing.
We'll get together later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to get you out to Dayton, Martin, at some point in time. And so I don't think it'll happen next year, but soon.
It won't happen the next couple of years because I have a young daughter now, but yeah, one day.
Yeah, we'll get you out there soon. So, yeah.
We have been known to exchange certain types of apple juice-based drinks, get a bit silly in the evening. It can be a bit of fun.
It can. Right, well, let's move on to the next one then. And just an interesting little booklet that was produced. It's a free ebook. That's amateurs like free. And it's about 50 megs, so the 6 meter band. I thought this was very, very good. Martin, I haven't given you the first opportunity to talk about one, Lisa. What do you think?
I was going to say we like free. Free is good. 6 meters, I think, is definitely a band that is underused. For a long time, I thought it was just dead. And then I was tuning around it one day and I put a call out and I worked someone in Spain and got a genuine 5.9 contact. It wasn't someone just saying 5.9 next for the sake of it. It was a genuine 5.9 contact. We had a little chat. After the contacts, at that point, I realised that I was just running 5 watts and thought, wow, I was quite impressed. What I do wonder, though, about other things like 50 megahertz, thinking back to a radio station that I worked at a while ago. Now, okay, we were broadcasting on FM broadcast legally, but our STL, our studio transmitter link, was operating at 52.75, so just above the UK 6 meter band. I think the Americans are allowed to use that band for part of 6 meters. But I wonder about propagation on that and whether perhaps other stations might be getting interference on their uplink. Yes, we use point-to-point directional antennas and things, but if your antenna happened to be facing towards someone further up the country using that frequency, and that those other people were using an omnidirectional antenna on their receive, I wonder, it's nowadays, of course, commercial operators use microwave links, T1 lines, whatever, but we were using much lower powered band 1 equipment. If I'd have realised that 6 meters was a magic band back at that time, probably wouldn't have even considered using band 1, although I believe it is still very much used nowadays.
Yeah, the other thing though, Martin, is if your bandpass filters are missing or gone astray or faulty, the second harmonic is smack bang in the VHF broadcast band.
Yeah, which is 105.5, and you could actually hear our station within our building, you could hear us on 105.5, and we weren't broadcasting on 105.5.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, when it only lasted for about, you get to the end of the doorway and you're gone. But it was that you could hear it.
Yeah, it just goes to show. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Well, we had a talk a few years ago by a guy called Chris Deacon, G4IFX, at our club. Very passionate guy. He's from the UK 6 metre group, and he actually did a really good talk about 6 metres, explaining what times of year it becomes active, and it's worth a go. And it's a really good talk. And in fact, reading this book, I've not read the whole thing, but I've had a bit of a flip through. I'd say it's more than a pamphlet. It's 49 pages, so it's definitely got a fair bit of content there. The guy that's written this, he's equally as passionate. The way he's written it, it looks pretty well written to me. It looks like he uses words like extraordinary and awesome. I'm looking at page 14 about meteor scatter, and clearly he's very passionate about this subject. I think people that are into this band are. I think there's something about it that turns something on and's got sparks a certain amount of passion, shall we say? So I would say if you've got time, it's free, as we know we like free in the amateur radio world. Download it and have a listen, and have a read, and it might be of interest.
Yeah, certainly is, Chris. Frank, do you like the 50 metre band, 6 metres? Sorry, 6 metre band?
I dabble with it and plan to do more with it. We've experimented doing local 6 metre nets, and that's too strong a word. Just a few guys usually getting on a certain frequency. I'd like this book from an editor's point of view, being a retired editor for Springer Media in the Netherlands. You can pitch these things in a lot of ways. And if you had a definitive textbook, you would have a lot of weeds there, particularly for the newcomer who's trying to see the forest. Many people think of 6 meters as having these huge arrays. There's a famous picture of Bob Howell of Howell Sound. When he was a young man, he built this huge 6 meter array, and he's actually walking along one of the beams, making some adjustments. He reminded me of one of the flying Wallendas who were trapeze act famous in the States in a circus. This is not that kind of book. It is written for the every man or every woman as Ham, who doesn't have a lot of land space. Jim Wilson, K5ND, the author, has had very modest space for antennas. So this is a book that gives you all of the high points, at least from my vantage point, with 2020 technology included. There's very little topically that's really left out. And so from an editor's point of view, I like that pitch because on your side of the pond, Don Field, president of the DX Foundation and editor of Practical Wireless, has a book out on 6 and 4 meters, and it's a more thorough coverage of it. There's some others out, on the Magic Band, but this is a very good book, no matter how long you've been a ham. But if you're relatively new to 6 meters, it's a great book to get most of it under your belt for the kind of ham who is like most of us, who struggles for antenna space. And yes, FT8 is mentioned. It gave Jim a shot in the arm on his DXCC work, but it's not just FT8. So it's a pretty good balance, I think, Martin.
Yeah, it's a good one, Frank, and so I think it's worth a download. Now, Ed, hopefully we haven't covered everything and left you nothing to say, but what do you think? And do you use 6 meters for your solar work?
To the last question, no, it's illegal. You're not allowed to operate 6 meters portable here in Germany. Not 6 meters or 4 meters. It has to be base station, has to be horizontally polarized, and a maximum of 25 watts EIRP. So there are restrictions. What is I find interesting about this book and about 6 meters in general is that originally the UK didn't have 6 meters. They didn't have 6 meters because it's where the TV stations were. It was Band 1 TV. And in the UK, you had 4 meters. I'm thinking back, when would it be, in the 80s? There was no 6, I'm pretty sure there was no 6 meters in the UK. It's all arrived maybe in the 90s and since. And what's very interesting in this book is the references on the last page half of the references are references to books written by UK amateurs. So even though this gentleman is based in the US, he's pulling on a lot of information, referring to a lot of books and material from the UK. So obviously the UK has really fallen in love with 6 meters. Perhaps it's because with 6 meters from the UK, when the conditions lift just a little bit, you can get to a lot of different countries around Europe. So yeah, it's called the Magic Band, and the old story, of course, is that it's affected both by things you'd get on the HF bands and on the VHF bands. Recently, I've been reading something that says that's not actually true, but it's how it's thought to be. And this book goes into, first of all, simple dipole, then a vertical, and then finishes off, I think, with a 3-element horizontal beam as the biggest one he's got there. He's also got an internal inside antenna as well. So a very nice introduction to 6 meters for somebody who has not been on it before and has got limited capabilities. And yeah, for sideband CW or even the beacon modes like FT8 and FT4, or the proper digital modes, the PSK and RITI and everything else. But I think what he covers as well in this book is the propagation. That he covers why there is sporadic E and how it works and other points. So it covers a lot of material in only 48 pages. It's actually very impressive.
Excellent illustrations too, right, Ed?
Yeah, easy to understand for somebody that's new.
And that's what we need. Clear, concise, and the sort of book that gets you started. You get a good overview, a good understanding, and then if you really get excited about a subject, potentially the 6 meter band, you then start delving deeper into some of the more heavier technical books. But I like all of you, I've had some very good contacts on 6 meters and had great fun with it. And usually, if I'm operating 6 meters portable with only a halo up, so it's nothing spectacular, but I've certainly worked all over Europe and had some great fun with that. So it does work, and that's the important thing. Right, moving to our last news story, and this is EI YOTA Success. So it's talking about YOTA in Ireland, but December is normally YOTA month, where the youth on the air get on the air and do things. So, Chris, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I can do. I mean, this year, I think last year, sadly, it was cancelled. So there is an event where I know groups of youth amateurs kind of have a camp. I think last year it was going to be in America, and I think that sadly got cancelled, and likewise because of the virus. But there is still a special event activity happening, and it's definitely it's definitely a busy time. There's lots of these. I've certainly worked in the past a number of these very passionate and busy stations. So there'll be some pileups there over the weekends this month, or maybe during the week as well, where these stations are on the air. They're normally quite easy to spot. They normally end in YOTA or something very similar. So get out there and work them, guys. These guys will want to work you, and get them in your log.
Yeah, they certainly will, and some good ones in amongst this. Hey, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I just want to cover the fact that YOTA the YOTA month wasn't cancelled last year. There was a YOTA camp in the US planned, and also one in Europe planned, that were both cancelled this year because of COVID. But the YOTA month has been going, I think it's like 3 or 4 years now, and it's always December. Started off in Region 1 and has expanded to Region 3 and Region 2. So, and as has been mentioned, the station name or the station call signs end in YOTA. So, for example, the UK one is GB20 YOTA. The German one is DL. I don't know what the number is, but there's DL something YOTA, DL2 YOTA perhaps. But in the US, because they're not allowed 4 characters after the number in the call sign, they've actually got single letter calls. So for Utah. I'll let Frank say what that is because he'll know off the top of his head. But I seem to remember it was K8Y, K8O, T, and A. So 4 separate single letter ones. Yeah, I'll let him correct me on that. But I think 8's not Utah, Ohio, Dayton, because the same people who were to have run the youngsters or the youth on the air camp at the VOA site in the summer this year are the same people who are organising the Americas YOTA month for December. Yeah, so all very good. Get on the work the youngsters. They're all under, I think, is it 26 or 27? And there are actually some very good operators out there. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly and how well they operate. Certainly, I've worked one down in New Zealand last year, which I was very impressed that got that far, and very clean operation and everything worked very well. But yeah, good to see youth in the hobby, of course, and good luck to them. They're after beating their record from last year with more contacts this year. And yeah, let's hope they do.
Yeah, we certainly do. Frank, do you want to go next? Because Ed pretty much put you in the picture, and that you've got to give us a definitive answer on some of this stuff.
Well, sure, but I'm going to plead ignorance on what he threw to me just because I don't know. I have not been terribly involved with this, but I do know what he's talking about with the group in Ohio, and that was unfortunately canceled for last year. I'll give my general comments here. This is, we talk about us graybeards, so to speak, and we got to get young people in amateur radio. Well, we've been saying that in the U.S. for 50 years or more. If you go back and read QST and CQ magazine, their historical issues. But it doesn't mean that it's not important. Instead of focusing just on individuals, being a sociologist, I like to focus on groups. I look at Youngsters on the Air as an organization that's doing several things very well. One, it is getting young people into amateur radio. If you go to the website, which we'll have in the show notes, but it's ham-yota.com, ham-yota.com. Very nicely done website. Lots of pictures, lots of content there, and it will give most of us graybeards a strong dose of encouragement to see young people getting into ham radio. Here's my point number 2. Some months ago, if not a year ago, I interviewed a young man up in Illinois who had won this kind of some attention for creating a young person's ham club, primarily on the air or on the digital mode with a I don't think it was Discord, but they have a server, a VoIP server. And in listening to him, he said, look, with respect, help us get started, but then we want to run our own show. And that's a fundamental listening point from a young person. What YOTA is doing is an age-old concept called train the trainer that teaches young people how to get more young people into amateur radio. I think that's a fundamentally important point for what YOTA is doing and what they're doing well, because that will do a lot more than us graybeards enticing a few to our club meetings. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying stop doing that. I am saying that getting young people engaged to bring other young people along, it's how we learned how to dance with rock and roll in the 50s here in the States. I dare say in the United Kingdom, there were similar things. So I'll leave it there. I'm very excited about this, and I'm delighted that we're covering the story.
Yeah, it's good, Frank. And I think YOTA is something we've always supported on the podcast.
The German station is DB0 YOTA, and I was right with the K8Y, K8O, K8T, and K8A are the US stations to listen out for.
Okay, well, that's good, Ed. We'll keep an eye out. Now, Martin, last words on this one. What's your thoughts?
I don't have much to say that hasn't already been said. It's a special event, or a special event call sign, and you can get awards for it. No excuse not to get on the air. And like I say, quote Dan, get on the air. Work these people. The youth are the future of this hobby. Without them, this hobby will die.
True, and I guess our Edmund will be, this is a special event, so I guess our Edmund's going to be heavily involved with this all over Christmas. So
He doesn't qualify. He's too old.
no, but he can work the people.
You can work the people. Yeah, I think they say you're going to put a station on. I think, no offence to Edmund, but I don't even think he could pull off a YOTA station on his own.
No, the only person who could pull off a YOTA station in our team is young Ruth.
Yes.
In fairness, but because I think you're the next youngest in your mind.
Possibly. I mean, I genuinely, I feel quite old at the moment. I'm 40 now, but yeah, I think I probably am.
Listen, I don't feel old. I don't feel old. When I was your best man, and you and your good lady said I hadn't grown up, that was good enough for me.
Seriously, they always say that men don't grow up; just the toys get more expensive.
That's dead correct. That's dead correct. Okay, well, unfortunately, Bill didn't join us. He might join us right at the very end, but hasn't joined us for news stories. And that concludes our news stories for this episode. So that's a good run round, some interesting stuff. Let's find out what the boys have been up to since the last time they was on. Chris, what have you been up to?
Well, talking of the toys getting more expensive, I've bought a few toys. So I have bought a DMR radio handheld, and I've also bought a Fusion handheld. So I've got all three now. I already had a D-Star handheld. I've had that for many years. So to go with my hotspot, I've been listening and playing with both DMR and Fusion actually over the last couple of weeks. I have to say, I bought this. I'm probably aware from my previous, rantings about DMR. Never been a massive fan of DMR just because it's very complicated. And what I like is this new radio that I bought. The previous radio that I had was a Motorola, so very much a commercial radio for use by a professional user, not someone that's going to tinker with it, someone that's been given it by their employer to use as part of their work, typically. Whereas what I've now got is the Anytone 878UV, which is essentially designed, I think, as an amateur radio. It's dual bands, and it's got a lot of features that you don't get with a more commercial radio. So it can do things like, one of the features that I really like so this has got built-in GPS, does DMR and FM, and works on 2 meter and 70 centimeter bands. But what I like about this radio is the fact that you can do things like, so one of the issues I had with the Motorola was you switch the radio on and you go to a talk group. You can see the radio was receiving something, we weren't hearing anybody because you didn't know what talk group someone was talking about at that point in time. What you can do with this radio is switch on digital monitoring, basically, which means it kind of puts it into promiscuous mode and will just tell you what talk group someone's. So you put the radio on, press that button, the button you program to do that on, and then it'll just tell you who's talking. They give you the call sign, give you what talk group they're on, what colour code they're on, what slot they're on. It's all there, so then you know what to set your radio to do. So it's a much more useful radio from an amateur perspective. It's not the sort of thing you would give to a security guard or someone who's using it professionally, because you don't want to play with those things. But for an amateur, it's great because it really helps you to learn about how the system works. So I'm having fun with that with my hotspot, and likewise, I've also now got the FT70, which is the sort of the budget end of the Yaesu DMR handheld range, shall we say. So I've been playing with that as well with on-system Fusion. So that's what I've been doing. Yeah, so just buying some new toys.
Yeah, well, I never thought you'd get that enthusiastic about DMR. I must admit,
And some of the radio, the one I've got, there are two models of this radio, the DMR one that has and one that hasn't got Bluetooth. And I went for the one that hasn't got Bluetooth because I didn't think, for my particular use case, I would use the Bluetooth. So, I like the radio. The battery life is amazing. It's got a nice speaker, and it's got lots of nice amateur tinkering features, shall we say. So, I'm not yet a full convert to DMR, but I'm certainly sort of giving it another shot, shall we say?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, I've got the Anytone 878 as well, like you, and I get my FT70 on the 25th of December. Mrs. B bought me one, So I'll have a Fusion handy talkie as well. Mine, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
I've been up to quite a lot, actually. I've been having a bit of a clear out, selling lots of old radio kit and stuff that I've had, like old CB stuff and stuff. I've had it sitting in my garage. It's been sitting there for a long time. It hasn't been used. So I thought, let's give it a new, let's get some money for it. Let's give it to someone who's going to get some use out of it. So parted with a fair amount of stuff. Been listening to a bit of Fusion and also playing with a D-Star hotspot here, getting very, very cross with Pi-Star, which just seems to be way too complicated for its own good. There's something going on with it. I can't quite work out why, but basically when I transmit and the radio should be listening, it seems like the radio keys up over me, and I can't work out why it's doing that. And you look online and no one seems to have posted about it, but I've just managed to join the forum, so I'm going to reach out and ask for help and try and see what I'm doing wrong, why it's doing that. Been playing with a UHF repeater that one of the guys at the radio club gave me. It's an ICOM, based on an ICOM system, but he had it. It was going spare. He didn't want it anymore. It was taking up room. He said, "Hey, you can have it." So I thought, "Oh, this is good." Brought that home and been playing with that. I switched it on initially, and it was making a bit of a funny noise, and it almost sounded like a fan running. But when you dive deep a bit more into it, it was a couple of dud electrolytic capacitors. So replaced that, had a bit of fun with that, and that's power supply is now working in that, so that's all good. And you might be surprised, we're all talking about digital modes. I bought a DAB radio, and this is going somewhere, by the way. Driving around, listening to various stations, obviously still very disappointed with DAB. Arkiva should be ashamed putting it on the air. Ofcom should be ashamed for letting anyone get away with it, especially as there are so many black spots in the network. It's untrue, and so many stations seemingly broadcasting music in mono. I mean, come on. But I don't know, I'm sure they've got their reasons for it. That aside, though, fitted around the outside of my DAB radio was a new car. So, as my old car basically failed its MOT, so now with a new car that happens to have a DAB radio in it, I have to work out where I can put my analog radio in it, as my existing hatchback mount that I had on my old Toyota does not fit anywhere on my new car because there is no lip as such that I can attach it to. I'm going to have to try and work out whether I can get a boot mount or whether I'm going to have to go down a mag mount route. Don't know. Have to have a think about that. But on the plus side, the battery for the car is in the boot, and there are 3 power sockets in it, one in the front, one in the back, and one in the boot as well. So getting power to it should be fairly easy, and that's what I've been doing.
Can I make a suggestion? Can Chris and I come round and drill a hole in the middle of your roof?
Look, I'm not going to drill a hole because the car's sufficiently new. But yeah, hey, I was up for doing that on your car, mate. You wanted to do it. I didn't talk you out of that.
Well, it's too late now. But I'll tell that in a minute. But yeah, it sounds like you've been having fun, mate. And I never thought I'd hear you talk about
buying a DAB radio. Yeah, I didn't buy a DAB radio, mate. I bought a car that had a DAB radio in it.
Yeah, they're coming now. The only thing I got to do is you've been emptying your garage out. I'm trying to load your garage back up again. I've got 3 repeaters to come to you.
We'll have to do that at some point. Yeah, just busy here.
Right, Ed, what have you been up to?
Oh well, a bit of a boring month of some more SOTA stuff. But just before I get off the topic of DAB radios and new cars, same things happened to me, but it'll be probably a year ago now. The other car gave up on us and we had to get another one, second-hand car, but it came with a DAB radio. But the thing's so blooming annoying, it keeps changing the station on us back to the first one in the list. And we've had it into the garage and not everybody else and da-da-da-da. Oh, no, they don't fit that model of multimedia unit in that model of car anymore. Oh, okay. Yes, so. But I just find it unreliable. Quality, pretty average to bad. And that's despite the fact that they don't load as many stations on the transmitters here in Germany as I think they do in the UK. But the quality is still very basic. If I can switch to an analog FM, because the radio's got both, it's always better quality. So, DAB should be dead and buried, but they keep flogging it, and it comes standard with the new cars now, it seems, or the newer cars. Okay, back to SOTA. I'm the happy situation that I actually got out on the beginning of the month, on the 4th, and activated 3 SOTA summits, 2 of which I hadn't been to before and were under several inches of snow. But all went well, and I'm quite happy because I've now got just a medium-sized rucksack, 40 litre, and in that I've got the radio, the battery pack, the antenna, the tripod for the antenna, and my pack up my food and drink and whatever, all in one bag. So it's just so easy. It's a real grab and go bag now, and that gives me 80 meters through 10 meters. And on that particular day, the conditions were good on 40 and 20. And the other news, unfortunately, is 2 days ago I went out and just activated 1 summit, and that was all fine. But the reason for doing it was not fine, because as of today, we're in full lockdown again, at least to the middle of January, more likely middle of February, which means curfews in the evening and no long-distance trips anywhere, trip from the home out only for medical or food, or if you're working. So we're in full lockdown. That's no more SOTA for me, no more summits on the air this year for me. So I have to hope that we get the lockdown lifted sometime early next year, and I can then get out again onto the hilltops. But at least I know I've got equipment that is reliable. I can just pick it up and take it at a second's notice, which, of course, if it's ever needed for emergency work, is also a plus point. So that's it from my side. The other thing I've done today is, because there's a storm coming, I've lowered down my 4 meter and 6 meter antennas, and they'll be down now most likely for the whole of winter. So once the winds start getting up around here, it's not good having too many antennas up. And one of these days I might actually get to work you guys down on the Thames again. You never know.
You never know. We might get back there. Well, I've just noticed Mr. Bill Barnes has joined us. Bill, I'll bring you in a minute. Let us see what Frank's been up to, and we'll find out what you've been up to, Bill. So, round to you, Frank. What have you been up to?
Oh, been following Chris's lead. Got a couple of toys here. Bought a Rig Expert AA55 that is through 6 meters. Zoom Bluetooth analyzer. And I already have the 230 stick model from them with Bluetooth. Testing the Bluetooth capability, Doug VE7DXK in Canada and I have been analyzing some of the connectivity issues with the software that goes with it called AntScope. It's now in version 2 and was made open source. The problem is the Bluetooth drops packets, and so you don't get the same reading with a Bluetooth connection as you would on a USB connection. And we've been trying to document that, figure out what's going on. Now, Doug actually does work in Bluetooth technology in his day job. So I've been tagging along with him to work with Rig Expert to identify the issues. So I bring all this up, so listeners should be aware that regardless of Rig Expert's general advertising, that certain of their antenna analyzers work in Bluetooth mode across different platforms, Android, iOS, Windows, and Linux. Using Bluetooth is just not ready for prime time in Bluetooth. However, works splendidly in USB. So with some of the antennas I've been putting up in my loft, I've been using that. Also picked up a Whisper Beacon, the Ultimate 3 device from Hans Summers at QRP Labs. W0A&M had one on for sale on eHam, and I picked it up for $50 plus shipping. That's cheaper than I could buy it from Hans and then build it. He'd already built it, so I'll get that on the air. And so we don't have any Whisper Beacons here in Central Mississippi, so this one will cover 80 through 10. So that'll help out some with that. Working with Dr. Scott Wright, K0MD, the recent editor, just now a step down editor of National Contest Journal. We're going to start looking at the ARL sweepstakes logs. They have a field they require called check year, which is your year of being licensed. And we're going to look at that in contests over some period of time, hopefully a decade or so. So we can compare how many newcomers versus graybeards, if you will, have been entering the contest. There's clearly some new contesters coming in. So we've requested data from the league office, and we'll see if they're able to do that. On that note, my next set of articles is in press at the National Contesting Journal. The 2 articles that will come out in the first couple of issues is on whether money buys performance or satisfaction with HF rigs. I've mentioned doing some of that analysis earlier. It's based upon Rob Sherwood's list of mostly transceivers, although there's a few receivers in it. And I'll point out that if you're an ARL member, you get all their magazines, including the NCJ in digital form, for free. And I'm scheduled to give a talk at the Denby Dale Club over in England on some of the results of that next month. And finally, I'm doing a little reading, a fictional book, Radio Girls by Sarah Jane Stratford. It's a fictional account of a poor girl who has holes in her shoes, who happens to land a job at the new British Broadcasting Company, circa 1926. I've read 3 chapters, and if you love radio, as all of our listeners do, you might pick that up, available through Amazon and elsewhere. Radio Girl. Getting a real giggle out of that one, Martin.
Well, that sounds interesting, Frank. Sounds interesting. And you've been very, very busy, as I can tell. So, we've all been busy. I've got quite a bit as well. But, Bill, sorry you couldn't make it for the round table, but, tell us what you've been up to since we last spoke to you.
Yeah, it's been a while because meeting schedule at work got lined up with the recording night, and it runs late, even though we only had 2 items on the agenda. But I've been very busy. First off, I wanted to say, I think it was last Thursday, I jumped into a Sutton and Sheen club meeting with a nice talk about studying for exams and tips and tricks and that kind of stuff. That club talk means that I have gone to more Sutton and Sheen club meetings this year than my local clubs in America. Thank you, Chris Howard, for the invite.
Well done, Bill.
Yeah, I probably have to cut you guys a check for dues at this point.
I've tried. They won't take mine.
Oh, okay. I actually did give a club talk before things got worse over here. Back in November, I gave a club talk on Summits on the Air to the Bald Eagle Repeater Association based out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Very well received. In fact, they have a almost drive-up summit right there at what we call the Montgomery Pike, which is on the other side of the river from Williamsport. So I actually recorded a video back in, I think it was March when I activated that summit. I recorded a video, sped it up, and showed them exactly how to get to that summit and into the activation zone. And it was a good talk, and there was a lot of interest, which that's always exciting. HF bands have been amazing. I don't know if you guys talked much about this. Last weekend was okay, but the weekend before was just absolutely phenomenal. So my logbook has a ton of FT8 contacts, a couple CWs. I did have a few county chasers from Japan looking for Montour County. And I got them on 20 meters, 17 meters, and one on 15. And I also actually finally heard Steve, WG0AT. He's one of the, I call him famous soda activators around here, because he used to take videos when the goats were in good health of him taking the goats up on the summits with him. I actually finally got him on 17 meters CW when he was up on Mount Herman in Colorado. Usually I can't hear him on 20 meters, but I was able to get him good on 17 meters, and he was kind enough to send me a recording, because he records his QSO so he can go through the logs later and update them to the SOTA database. And so I actually got to hear how bad I sound, which that was pretty amusing. But I did want to mention again, we got a little reprieve from band conditions on HF a couple weekends ago, and it was just lovely. And that's about it on my end.
Well, it's funny mentioning Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Bill, I did visit Williamsport, Pennsylvania a few years ago and stayed at the, seems to recall staying at the Genetic Hotel, which I think is reasonably famous in that area. Have you heard of that one at all? But yeah, I've actually been there. It's interesting. Small world.
Yes. In the 95 or 96, I actually had to do some work at the Genetti. They had a Novell network back then.
Wow, there you go.
I really loved NetWare 3. I was really, really, really skilled at it.
Same here. I couldn't understand this Microsoft stuff. Novell was good. That's another story, Bill. And we're going off on a deep tangent now. You have all these people sort of throwing spears at me now for that statement. Well, you guys have been very, very busy. For once, I've been fairly busy. Carol, Mrs. B, brought home 2 radios that she asked me to look at for people she knew. Now, before you all go put the crosses up against this, she brought home a Belfang UV9R. Now, the 9R looks quite a nicely manufactured radio. I put it in the receive. The guy wanted it programmed. And the UV9R is a waterproof radio. So it's IP67 rated, so you can drop it into a tank of water for the meter deep for 30 minutes before it starts to leak, or it's rated at that. Nice little radio, but it doesn't use the same programming lead as everybody else, because obviously it's waterproof. So he's got to go off and get a programming cable before I'm going to sit down and explain a lot of things. He's not an amateur. He wants to listen to amateur radio, so I'm kind of going to program him some bits in there, and so he can listen. I'll break his legs if he starts transmitting. Hi. The other thing Carol brought home was this massive monster radio that this guy used to belong to this guy's dad, who was mega sentimental to him, and it had been in the loft for God knows how long. And you think, oh my God, I've really got a problem here. It was a National Panasonic DR48. Now, the DR48 model number is for the Europe, UK and Europe. The rest of the world had it as an RF4800. It would be effectively it's a monstrous thing. You can look it up on RigPix. But it did everything. But the problem was it hadn't been used. And I let it sort of dry out for 3 or 4 days because it had been in a loft, come up to room temperature. And it was all dirty band switches. Everything was a dirty band switch, and the volume control was literally unusable. I had to clean that big time to get it to work anywhere near sensible. The biggest problem was, though, you literally had to strip this thing down. You had an hour to get to the volume control so you could actually work on it. It was quite a well engineered piece of kit. Anyway, net result is it went back to the user and he's perfectly happy with it, which sounds good. Some time ago, Richard, GAITB, he gave me, I said to him, I'll buy your BitX 40 case off you because I want to case my BitX 40 up. And Richard turned up at the club one day and with the case because he ordered a grey one, they sent him a red one, and he'd lost interest, I think. Richard, I think that's a fair statement. And he said to me, oh, I'm not going to bother with this. Here, you have the BitX 40 as well. So I sat down and I put the BitX 40 together in a case, and I now have a BitX 40 QRP rig in a case, all bar the volume control knob at the moment. The volume control works, and I'll put a PTT light on it so I can see when it's in transmit as well. And then, as a masochist as I was that day, I had another look at the Tentec 1330, and it took me a while to suss what it is. I haven't fixed it yet. It's one of these radios where it's not designed to be taken apart once you've built it. it's not serviceable really, and the VFO's a long way off frequency. It's a 30-meter radio and it transmits on 11.5 megs. So I've got to fix that at some point in time. DMR calls, as Chris said, yeah, we've been on DMR. I've been on DMR. Chris has. But the other thing in the UK, for UK users, Brandmeisters in the UK changed their connection server. So if you've got a hotspot and you think it's been a bit quiet for a while, it's because you're not connected to the right server anymore. So you have to go in and change the server. There's information on Brandmeisters, what needs doing. So just be aware of that.
Martin, so just on that, Martin, just on that subject as well, I noticed that there's also a need as well now to set a password as well on your account as well for connecting to that
Yes.
to the network. So you need to another one to watch out for very soon if you don't set that up.
Yeah,
Again, you probably find it goes very quiet if you don't configure your hotspot for that as well.
correct.
The US Brandmaster servers are also on the same deal. They want you to go in and set your individual hotspot password for connection instead of the generic default one, which is it was no trouble at all to go do that. You just have to remember your login to Brandmeister.
And in fact, I found the instructions are actually really, really good, really helpful. So it's not just full; there's really step-by-step screenshots of what to do, and it's a 5-minute job when you've done it. I say, as Bill says, as long as you know your password to log in, then to log into the system to the site, then it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, so that's another useful piece of information. And so DMR, there have been some changes recently. If yours goes very quiet very quickly, you really need to look up these modifications. Bit of sad news yesterday. I had to say bye-bye to my car. I totaled it yesterday afternoon. It was an old car. The lady pulled out of a junction. I won't use Mrs. B's description. I'll use a more polite one. A lady pulled out of a junction in front of me when I was right on top of the junction. And I wasn't going that fast, but an 18-year-old car, a scratch on it is enough to write it off. And seeing as all the front's gone, the hood, as you guys are saying in the States, the hood's all bent up and the front's all wrecked off. That's a write-off. So I was there today taking my radio out, my transceiver out the car in the yard. It's gone off to the big bye-bye factory. So unfortunately, be no more Fusion for a few weeks until I sort putting my Fusion in another car.
Oh, Martin, in fact, Christmas Day, when you get your new handheld.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can do Fusion at home, and I can do Fusion with a handheld, but Fusion Mobile might have to be a little bit...
Handhelds work mobile.
They do, but I like to be hands-free. Yeah. And last but not least, I'm going to install a 20-meter antenna. I'm going for 20 meters initially because 40 meters is got a lot of interference on it where I work. But I'm going to slip up a 40-meter antenna at the back of the building. So over Christmas period, when it's a bit quiet and I'm supposed to sit in the crew room and wait for the call, I might actually get some 20-meter operating. Hi. So I'm quite looking forward to that. So that'll be up and working probably just before Christmas, and then between Christmas and New Year, I hopefully get some operating in. So that's where I am. So looks like we've all been very busy, and so hopefully it's brought some inspiration to some of our other listeners that we're in it like you are. So I'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for joining me tonight. I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH.
Thank you, Martin. It's been the usual fun evening.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I'd like to thank Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL.
See you on 342.
Yeah, we'll catch you soon. I'd like to thank Mr. Ed Durant, DD5LP.
Very welcome. Fun as always.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH.
Thank you for having me again. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. And Bill, I know you didn't join us for News Roundtable, but once again, thanks for joining us, Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B. Over to you, Bill.
Hey, you got it this time. I'm very proud of you. And thank you very much for the invite.
Yeah, I got your call sign written down, Bill, so I'm all right now. I can't remember things, but I've got it written down, okay? Okay. Right, well, I'd like to say 73 to you all, and we're going to continue with the rest of the podcast. 73, guys.
73.
73.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
Now it's time to have a look at the news in brief with me, Colin M6BOY. We start with news here in Germany, where amateur radio exams have been cancelled, and this announcement will mean that there'll be no test until mid-January at the earliest. The Federal Network Agency reports that due to the current developments in connection with the exponential spread of the coronavirus, that there'll be no more amateur radio exams until at least mid-January. Furthermore, the agency asks applicants to refrain from registering for exams until new exams in place have been published, and I say they will advise this in due course. So news there from Germany, as I say that exams are on hold for the time being. I say why they just sort things out there, obviously hoping that I say the rises we're seeing across Europe hopefully dampen down soon and they can get back onto registering people from there. We're off to the Channel Islands next, and in Jersey, GB7 Juliet India joins the D-Star repeater network. Now, the repeater is based just north of St. Helier, and this D-Star repeater will mainly serve Jersey, but could also provide coverage for the rest of the Channel Islands and the adjacent French coast. So it's 88 metres above sea level. And say frequencies are for transmit 430.850 and receive 438.450. So say news there on the D-Star network growing, and say available now potentially across the Channel Islands. You may be thinking about settling in now for your Christmas roast dinner, but spare a thought for Alexei RX6A. He will be active as RI01ANT from Antarctica from Christmas Day through to May the 30th. Activity will be from Russian Progress WAP Rus 11 and Rostock WAP Rus 13 base stations. Operations will be on 40 metres and higher using some CW and some FT8. And these are available for QSLs via his QRZ pager RX6A. So certainly one to listen out for. Over the Christmas period, and wishing Alexei all the best in operating Antarctica for Christmas Day. Now we're heading over to our features episode, where it's important to remember at this time of year that it's important to get on the air to care. So we'll hand you over to Martin for this episode's feature.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast. Well, hi guys, for this episode's feature, I've got an update from the RSGB, the Christmas update, which I arranged some time ago. Unfortunately, Mr. Steve Thomas is not very well at the moment, so he won't be joining us. But that's not a problem, because as much as we wish him well, we've still got the lovely Heather. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Martin. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, and Heather is the communications manager for the RSGB. I have Mr. Stuart Bryant, who I've known quite a long time, G3YSX. You're an RSGB board member, aren't you, Stuart?
Yes, I am, yes.
And we often get to chat at rallies, so good to chat to you on the podcast.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Roy, G0VFS. Roy's joined us and going to tell us what he's done with construction. So that's going to coming up soon. So Heather, get on the air to care campaign's done really well.
Mm-hmm.
I know we were chatting very loosely after the record last time, and you mentioned get on the air for Christmas. It's happening. Tell us more about get on the air for Christmas.
It's happening indeed, yes. Well, as you say, Get on the Air to Care has been brilliantly successful this year in helping to support radio amateurs during an incredibly difficult time. And it's spread the message about amateur radio more widely into the mainstream as well, which has been fantastic. But coming up to Christmas, all the restrictions still in place. We know that it can be a difficult time for many at the best of years. But this year in particular, we wanted to make sure that all radio amateurs feel part of a caring amateur radio community. So Get on the Air for Christmas runs from the 19th of December through to the 9th of January, and it just brings together a few activities that radio amateurs can participate in. You can take part in all of them, any of them. There are lots more details on our website, which is www.rsgb.org/GOTA, then the number 4 and C, Get on the Air for Christmas. We're going to talk about a couple of the aspects of those in greater detail later, but just to give you a quick overview, we've got GB1 NHS on the air on Sunday the 20th and Wednesday the 30th of December. GB1 NHS is the special event call sign for the NHS, obviously in a COVID secure environment from the RSGB's NRC. So do listen out, give them a call. The Christmas Hope QSO party. This is a special international event. It starts on the 21st of December, runs through to the 14th of January with a couple of short breaks over Christmas and New Year. There are different modes each day, and it's definitely being organised as a way for amateurs to be in touch rather than just a quick contest. The Hope QSO party we talked about with you earlier in the year drew participants from over 30 countries and was a huge success. So we're hoping this Christmas one will do the same and be a great focus for radio amateurs over the holiday time. We've also got some information on the website about holiday nets, because we know that clubs across the country are also doing a very similar thing and trying to make sure that the radio amateurs in their local areas have people to talk to. So we've got a list on our website of the nets that we know about, so people can call in and know that there will be somebody to talk to at a particular time on a particular frequency. And then the things that we're going to talk about later, as you said, about amateur radio construction. We've got our fantastic charity auction running at the moment. By the time this is going out, we'll know what the final amount raised is. And we've also got a construction competition, which is running through to the end of January as well. So more information about that. So hopefully different things that different people can take part in that suits their interest, dip in and out over the holiday period. But one thing we would love to do, just before I finish, is if you do get involved, we'd love to see your photographs if you do social media. So if you put a post out or a tweet or something like that with the hashtag Get On The Air for Christmas, put a short explanation, or you can email comms@rsgb.org.uk if social media is not your thing. And we're going to create a special report in Radcom on the website, but it will just help to see people getting involved, which is lovely.
Yeah, that's a good one, Heather. You've given us certainly a hell of a lot of information there, which was very valid. And don't worry, guys, you ain't the only one with a face for radio. I have one as well. So don't worry too much about your pictures. You don't have to have your hair cut. So there you go. Stuart, the RSGB put together a special construction contest this year for Get On The Air for Christmas. What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, unfortunately, this is a very unusual Christmas, and many amateurs will be either on their own or with a reduced number of people for a reduced number of days. So many amateurs will be sort of searching through their junk box and have bought in bits and pieces and modules and kits and be warming up their soldering irons or getting new software libraries, etc., ready on their computers, and generally getting ready to do some sort of project over the long winter break. So the RSGB's new Get On The Air for Christmas construction competition was set up, and it's open to projects that have been carried out during the autumn 2020 lockdowns, or which have or will be undertaken during the Christmas holiday season. These projects can be hardware, software, or a system, and of course they may be based on a kit.
No, I was going to say that's good news, because if somebody can't scratch build, there's still skill in building a kit and making it work.
Absolutely. And we quite often have kit entries in our main autumn construction competition. I should say that the winning entry will get a £100 prize from the RSGB, and we'll put their entry on the RSGB website, and it will feature in Radcom. And we would like the entries in for the 1st of February 2021. That's the deadline. And we will give special consideration for simple projects that other amateurs can try for themselves. So further information is on our website, www.rsgb.org/GOTA4C.
Well, that's good news, Stuart, and that sounds like a really interesting thing. Roy, you took part in the annual construction contest this year, and you won the special lockdown category. Tell us about your entry.
All right. Well, good afternoon, and thanks for having me on the podcast today. When I retired a couple of years ago, I bought myself a mini lathe, and that was enabled me to be able to make all the individual parts for morse keys, the thumb screws and such. Construction's always been a very, very important part of the hobby of amateur radio for me. But I do enjoy not just the electronics, but the mechanical side as well. And I am a keen CW operator, or at least trying to get my speed back to where it once was from leaving the hobby for a few years. I particularly enjoyed making Morse keys, and I've made manual keys and single paddle keys and dual paddle keys. But I'd never ever made or tried to make a Vibraplex key. So it's something I wanted to do. And of course, the amount of different parts on a Vibraplex key add to its complexity. And I had absolutely no idea, never having had one in my hands, never actually seen one in the flesh. I had no idea how one would, go about it and how it was supposed to work. So I looked up lots of websites and lots of pictures. I watched a few videos until I had a rough idea how the anatomy of this key was supposed to be. And of course, then because we had the Get On the Air to Care campaign, this was around March and April when I started doing the key. I decided, to enter it into the competition. It's it has a wooden base with a stainless steel base plate, and then it's all made up with brass on top of that. When it was completed, it worked very well, and I was very, very pleased with it, and so posted it up onto some of the Facebook groups, and also I believe it did eventually appear on the RSGB Facebook group. And there were some very nice comments made regarding it. So that was really how it came about. Because it was done entirely over the COVID lockdown, I decided to call it the virus perplexed bug. A little bit of a tongue-on-cheek reference to, of course, the Vibraplex key. And also because it was done over this period of time when we were trying to protect the NHS from being overloaded by the numbers of COVID victims, I put a little plaque on it and sort of dedicated it to the NHS. And so that's really basically about the key.
Well, that's great. Now, very quickly, I'm going to ask you an extra question I had in mind while you were talking. Have you made two so you keep one yourself?
No, I haven't. It was actually quite time consuming and making all the individual thumb screws, and there was a great deal of them. As you know, there's lots of different settings on a Vibraplex key. It did come a little bit tedious, but I don't know. I might have another attempt at making another one sometime in the future.
Well, this time, Roy, do me a favour. You keep it. If you put that much work into it, you deserve to. Now, you've chosen to donate the original one, your winning entry, for the NHS Christmas charity. How did this come about?
What happened was I noticed a comment on I think it was the RSGB closed Facebook group, because I did put it on a Morse Lovers, or I can't remember now the name offhand, and it received so many nice, kind comments. And one comment that came through was how this would make a great auction prize. That this made me think. I thought to myself, well, yes, it would, and I'd really like to do that. But I had absolutely no idea how one would go about such a thing. I've never sold things on eBay before, and the whole, setting it up, and publicity and all that sort of thing. I thought, well, best thing to do is to get in touch with the RSGB and see what they say and what can be done, which is what I did. And of course, from there on, the RSGB took it up, and of course, Heather made lots of arrangements, and I really like to thank Heather and the RSGB for actually making this possible. It's a real privilege, really, to be able to do something to help the NHS. I mean, they really have had a hard time of it, haven't they? Coping with the amounts of people that have fallen prey to this awful virus.
They certainly have, and that sounds good. Now, Heather, you've been responsible then for the marketing side of it, which is trade you have. But what's been the response to the auction? Have we had lots of people, or is it looking good?
It's looking very good. As we speak, the winning bid at the moment is just over £550. By the time this goes out, the auction will have finished. It finishes on 7:30 on Saturday the 19th of December. And we'll know the final total, and hopefully it will be even more. There's often a last-minute flurry of bids for auctions. And what's even better is that the RSG board has promised to match fund the winning total up to a maximum of £1,000. So with the generosity shown by radio amateurs in their bidding at the moment, and the equal donation by the society, will definitely raise a fantastic amount for NHS Charities Together, which is the specific charity that Roy chose for this. And we just like to thank Roy. It's an incredibly generous donation of his to offer this for auction after all the effort he put into it. And we're just really happy to be part of it and helping to promote it and to raise the money that hopefully it's going to raise.
Yeah, that's good. Stuart, looking at the wider picture of amateur radio and construction being a very interesting part that I find interesting as much as operating, you obviously doing this to get more people involved. Do you think it will actually bring more youngsters or more people back to the hobby if they're actually getting their hands in there?
Well, I hope so. Construction is enormous fun, and I'd encourage everyone to try it. It really sort of makes you feel good when you're doing something with your hands, or you're thinking through a problem and finding a new, hopefully elegant solution. That really makes you feel fantastic. And there is nothing like the feeling you get when something you've made yourself works. That's the first thing. Secondly, construction teaches you a lot. It may teach you new physical skills in fabricating something, or you may gain new knowledge about how electronics and software works. You actually learn a lot more, by the way, when things don't work. So instead of putting the project to one side, chase down the bug and find out what was wrong with the design or its implementation. I can tell you that professionally, debugging software can be quite addictive. And finally, construction allows you to make things that you simply cannot buy. For example, things that allow you to better integrate the bits of your radio station together, or extend parts of your station in ways that you couldn't otherwise do so. And finally, of course, it's a safe way of spending these dark winter days away from this bug.
Yeah, I would say that in fairness, one of the tips I give somebody, certainly if you're a kit builder or you're starting with kits, one of the certainly things is don't rush it. Sit down, enjoy the build, the time building, think about what you're doing, and don't rush.
Absolutely. Check and check again. One of the gadgets I have is one of these cheap Far Eastern component testers. And before anything goes into the circuit board, I put it on there and check that the resistor is the value I thought it was, or the capacitor is the value I thought it was, that the transistor plausibly works, and much, much better to check and check and check and then solder than try and find out why it didn't work afterwards.
Certainly is. And one of the biggest problems often is when winding toroids. They're not difficult. The big problem is people don't clean the varnish off the ends, so they don't add solder joints. That's a little tip from Stuart and I. Right, moving back to Roy. Roy, you built this beautiful key, and you're obviously pretty good at engineering. But what else have you built in the past?
over the years, I've made a large amount of projects. As I said earlier, construction has always been the main thing in the hobby for me, and has already been said there by Stuart. You get a tremendous sense of satisfaction making something yourself, and to actually use that item on air, it's even more so. I've made quite a few keys now. In fact, somebody once said, when they saw the keys in one of the pictures on my website, gosh, make one more and you'll have one for every day of the week. And I really do enjoy having a QSO, using something I've made myself with my own hands. But I've made lots of things, power supplies and test equipment and QRP radios. And it really is great fun to do. The project I've just completed actually over this latest COVID shutdown is a rebuild of a Wellbrook loop. I had a friend give me one that the electronics had been damaged, and of course it's all potted into a pot with resin, so you can't actually get in there to find out what component has failed. But with the help of a website I discovered from a George Smart, M1GEO, who's done a reverse engineering of the Wellbrook loop and called it the Wellgood loop. He supplied me a professionally made PCB and the toroids, the binocular type toroids. And so using his information and his circuit boards, I've rebuilt and rehoused because of course the housing for the original was damaged trying to get it off the aluminium loop. I've rebuilt the circuitry on the board and wound the toroids, which, as you say, are quite difficult, and you really have got to make sure you burn off that resin, that shellac on the wire. But got it all together, and it works beautifully. Really, really pleased with it. So that's my latest little project. But things I've made over the years, the very first project I ever made was back in 1980 when I first got licensed as a G8 call, and I made my own quarter wave ground plane, which is a really nice, simple antenna for somebody starting out. And that was just the beginning, really, of all the various projects I've been involved with.
Yeah, well, that's the good thing. Once you get the bug, you're hooked for life. So that's great, Roy. Stuart, there's been a large number of influx of new amateurs into the hobby over the last few months with some of the training bits and pieces that the RSGB are doing, online training and that sort of thing, and exams. But, where are we going in the next few months? Are we going to looking to increase and make it easy for people by getting them more excited with this sort of constructional stuff?
Well, first off, I think it's good to say thanks to Dave Wilson, M6BOY, for the great insight he had into how to deal with the fact that we could no longer run RSGB exams when the first lockdown happened. And so he took quite an innovative approach to how we would conduct them. And that's resulted in over 2,300 foundation licenses, 660 intermediates, and 200 full license passes, which is way beyond what we'd seen in the past. So as people sort of get into amateur radio, certainly construction is something that they should definitely try their hand at. And I've got a few hints and tips about getting started. So first off, there's a Tonight at 8 webinar, one of the RSGB's new series of webinars on the 11th of January, and that's going to focus on construction, and we'll have all kinds of hints and tips. So that's available on the RSGB YouTube channel. And we have Steve Hartley, G0FUW, and Pete Giuliano, N6QW from the States. And they'll be talking about what to do and how to do it and why you should try. Secondly, I would say that many people sort of don't really think that they want to try construction until they actually try it. And now's, a really good time to get your hand in and try it. What you'll discover is that there are lots of new building blocks around that make it easy to do functions that were otherwise really quite complicated to build yourself. But if you look on the various auction sites and Far Eastern sales sites, you will find lots and lots of interesting modules that make life much, much easier than it used to be. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that there's been quite an influx of cheap test equipment available at really low prices, but very good quality. Things that just when I started my career would cost a fortune as professional equipment are now available for a few tens of pounds. Things like oscilloscopes and spectrum analyzers and network analyzers in particular. The other thing is that the RSGB does a huge range of publications, books that will help you to get started in construction. For example, the new edition of the RSGB Radio Communication Handbook is full of ideas about pretty well every aspect of amateur radio that you might wish to turn your hand to.
Yeah, well, that's good. And yeah, building yourself. And it can start, guys, you start simple and move up to it. Don't go out and buy a massive transceiver kit if you've never soldered before in your life. Start off with something simple, get that working, enjoy it, move on to the next one. And you could start as simply as putting two PL259s on a length of cable. I know of people that have gone into the dealer to buy a patch cable. Now, we are amateurs, boys.
So what I would say is that a lot of people think of construction as hardware. But there's an enormous amount you can do in software these days. And things like Arduinos and some of the accessories that go with that give a whole different slant to construction without needing to take a soldering iron out. So if that's not your style, but you're interested in building things on a computer, that is much, much easier than it used to be, and you can build some really interesting things.
Yeah, and as we go forward, probably in the next 10 years, there won't be much other than SDR built into your radios. So software skill will be very good. Heather, unfortunately, left you till last, but done the Get on the Air to Care. You've done Get on the Air for Christmas. Mm-hmm. Are we going to do anything in 2021?
Well, we launched Get on the Air to Care, as you know, as a response to the pandemic. We said we'd run it as long as it was needed, not having any idea at that time just how long it would be needed. But I think for us as a society, it means that while social restrictions are still in place, people aren't able to meet their friends and families, they're not able to get involved in amateur radio clubs in the same way, then we feel there's still a need for this special focus. And it's all about supporting radio amateurs, giving them things that they can get involved in while they've got time to try something new with the construction, for example, or getting on the air for a Hope QSO party, trying something like that for if that's different for them. But obviously, once restrictions are lifted, we will draw these particular campaigns to a close. And, it'll be great at that point to celebrate the fact that not only have they supported thousands of radio amateurs in the UK, but also it's raised awareness of amateur radio to millions of people through amateur radio outlets like yourself, but also the mainstream media as well. Looking ahead, the challenge for us as a society is obviously to support all the new and the returning licensees, as well as people who've been radio amateurs for many years. And we'll be looking at the types of resources, activities, things that we can offer next year as we move into whatever the new normal looks like at that point. We keep having new normals, don't we? They keep generating into a different new normal. But, as we talked about last time, Martin, the important thing also, it's not just about the society providing activities. It's important for all radio amateurs to be supportive of new and returning licenses. So they're encouraged to keep learning and progressing and enjoying their newfound interest. And we've all had to adapt this year, both in life and in amateur radio. And even as we start to meet again and the clubs can start to meet again, I think that we're going to have to continue adapting. Clubs are going to need to continue to adapt, and we're going to have to find different ways of working together as a community to ensure that this surge of interest that Stuart's talked about, the numbers of people coming into or back to amateur radio, So that interest and involvement continues to gain momentum, because it would be a real shame if we'd had this incredible success, incredible surge of interest, and then the momentum stopped, wouldn't it? That would just be really sad. So I think we need to work together to find ways to keep that momentum going.
I think I totally and utterly agree with you on this, Heather. You know, it's down to each and every one of us. It's not just down to the few people at the RSGB to tell us or give us the idea to do it. Answer the calls on the repeaters. If you're out mobile and you're doing nothing else, obviously make sure you're safe, hands-free, but answer people. Try and work the M7s first, because they're the ones that need the practice. But work people. If you find somebody that's come back into the hobby, give them a flavour of some of the new things that are happening, because they're looking a little bit bewildered. They're like,
absolutely.
Yeah, some of them look as though they like rabbits being caught in the headlamps, and the hobby's moved phenomenally in the last few years. So it's down to each and every one of us. And, you know, I at the moment, I know we're in lockdown and clubs are running Zoom meetings and all sorts of other bits and pieces. My own club, well, we're starting to get people joining us from the States. I know Denby Dale Club's had a lot of people from all over the world join. So we're actually, as an amateur radio group, gelling better together. And, you know, if we in the UK are the leaders, fine be it. Somebody has to do it. So, the last thing, and I'm going to put you a little on the spot here, Heather, are we going to have a get on the air for Easter?
Honestly, I'd hope not, because it would be lovely to think that we were in a position as a country and as a world where we didn't need that. But that's really not down to me. It's down to the vaccinations and all of the other things. But watch this space, I think.
Yeah, I was being a bit naughty. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. But
No, it's fine. I would genuinely love not to be running a get on the air for Easter, because that would mean that we didn't need it and life was back to something that I think we would all appreciate.
We certainly would. Well, I think that's a very good chat we've had this afternoon. Heather, can you be the coordinator of emails if anybody wants to email the three of you for extra information?
Absolutely. If you want to email comms, COMMS, at rsgb.org.uk, and I'll be very happy to forward that to anybody, Stuart or to Roy, if you've got questions for them, or I'll answer myself if you've got questions for me.
Yeah. And equally, you don't forget, Heather's given you the email address, but if you forgot it by this moment in time, 30 seconds after she told you, you can always email me at the ICQ podcast and I'll forward it on to Heather as well. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to thank you, Heather. Thank you for setting this up and arranging it for me.
Pleasure, Martin.
That's great. I'd like to thank Mr. Stuart Bryant, G3YSX.
Oh, okay, Martin. Yes, indeed. I'd remind people that every year we have our main construction competition in the autumn. We had a huge number of entries last year. So if you decide that you've got an addiction to construction, please carry on and please send us your entry, no matter how simple or how complicated, to the main construction competition in the autumn.
Now you've told everybody that, Stuart, that's reduced my chances of winning. And I'd like to thank Roy for joining us. Roy, I haven't got your call sign in front of me, but thank you very much for joining us as well.
Yeah, it's G0VFS. A bit of a mouthful, but people find it a bit difficult with the VFS. It sort of doesn't roll off the tongue. But it's been my pleasure. It's been nice to talk to you all today. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, all that's left for me to do is say 73s. Have a very Merry Christmas, you guys, and a Happy New Year. 73.
Thank you.
73.
The ICQ Podcast. Getting it said for amateur radio.
Well, everybody, I really hope you enjoyed our features episode there on the RSGB and NHS, thinking about the mental health of potentially not only the 3 million amateur radio operators worldwide and shortwave listeners, but also, as I say, the wider community, and thinking about that and getting on the Air to Care campaign is a fantastic shining light, I'd say, in a troublesome 2020, wouldn't you agree, Dad?
I certainly would, Colin. And the other thing I mentioned in the recording is that in many ways this is bonding amateurs all around the world. But people are getting involved in all sorts of things, and we're seeing an increasing number of non-club members turning up to our Zoom chats, club meetings, which is fine. It's great. And there's a lot of communications going on. There'll be a lot of people on air over Christmas. Hopefully I'm going to get a fair bit on, a little bit of HF, certainly a VHF, a UHF, bit of DMR, and if my new radio arrives, Fusion. So I've got no excuse for being off the air over Christmas period.
Exactly. Well, talking about being on the air, we got a lovely bit of feedback from Andy Crawford, Sierra Papa 9 November Lima, India, and he said, thanks for another interesting podcast and all the best 73s from Andy, who's actually based in Poland at the moment, so thanks a lot there for that feedback, Andy. I know we did tease doing a Q&A, listener Q&A in this episode, but I'm sure you guys appreciate the importance of this campaign we're highlighting in this episode, so we're going to hold over those questions there until our next episode. So you've still got some time to get in any questions, and maybe you might want to ask Martin about his new radio. That maybe we can cover some questions for that as well in the episode in 2021, the first one of new year. So to get involved, all you got to do is go to the ICQ podcast webpage and say click on the contact us section, drop us a mail, and we'll pick it up from there. Talking about the webpage, you can do what Bill, Whiskey 4 Echo X-Ray Tango, and Stephen, Golf 6 Juliet Echo Victor have done, and that's show your value for the show by setting up a donation to the ICQ podcast. So all you basically do is go to the donation page on icqpodcast.com, think of the value the show brings you, and say fill that in, and say everything that comes our way pays our running costs, and it gets reinvested back into the show and trying to improve the show for you. So as I say, anything you send our way is greatly appreciated and keeps the show advert free and pays our bills for us, so we really do appreciate that. Right, we need to thank Chris, Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike 0 Sierra Golf Lima, Ed, DD5 Lima Papa, Frank, Kilo 4 Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, as I say, for taking part in the News Roundtable. Very thanks, guys, for taking part there. As I say, it's always great to have you guys, your views and your thoughts on what's going on in the amateur radio hobby. Well, Dan, I know it's been a very interesting week for yourself for one reason or another, and I just wonder if there's anything else we need to cover before, I say, we wrap up the final show of 2020.
I think mostly, from my point of view, it's been a very busy year for everybody in one way, shape or another. I, being deemed as a key worker, have been at work all the way through, doing normal shifts, and we've still got the podcasts out. This is not a bitch session. It's been, for me, it's been an extremely busy few months because there's been extras going on. However, if I haven't got back to you, or if I haven't spoken to you in a long while, or for any other reason, it's not I don't care about you. I really and honestly don't know where the time goes. We've been so busy, and I've been trying to catch up with as many of you as possible that speak to me on a regular basis. And I thank those who sent me Christmas cards. Thank you very much for that. And I do care about you. That's the important thing. And this week, having wrecked a car and lost about 8 hours out of my week, it's been an even more manic week than normal. But, hey, Colin, we've come out the other end. We're releasing on time. And, a bit of burning the midnight oil, but we're releasing on time, aren't we?
Exactly. Over 12 years and never missed a deadline. So that's some going, isn't it? I tell you. Well, as I say, I don't know if this tradition holds fast in other parts of the world, but in the UK, you have those fantastic Christmas selection biscuits that come in those gorgeous, very festive tins filled with chocolate treats, and I think it's time to send you off for one last time in 2020 to the kitchen and make Mrs. B a cup of tea, and you know what, crack open a festive tin of biscuits for her, won't you?
I've certainly noticed Mrs. B has some extremely nice chocolate biscuits in the cupboard, and I'm going to give her the option in a second when I make her a cup of tea of a cup of tea and a chocolate biscuit, or because it's festive, a cup of tea and a mince pie. So there you go, Colin. We'll continue the Christmas tradition of occasionally a mince pie, occasionally a chocolate biscuit.
Fantastic. Well, say, season's best to you. Happy Christmas and Happy New Year to you all. And next time we'll be talking to you will be 2021. So I say, guys, look after yourself over this festive season. 73s all.
Yeah, 73s, guys. Keep safe, and we'll be back with you next year, as Colin said.